David Bushnell and His Turtle, The Story of America's First Submarine by June Swanson, illustrated by Mike Eagle. Chapter 1. How It All Began. In 1776, men from the 13 American colonies met in Philadelphia to write a Declaration of Independence from England. Then came the hard part, fighting for that independence. Each colony had a small army made up mostly of farmers and storekeepers. They chose a farmer from Virginia colony as their leader. His name was George Washington. The colonies needed ships for a navy. Because the 13 colonies stretched along the Atlantic Ocean from Massachusetts in the north to Georgia in the south, the sea was important to them. Many men made their living from the ocean. Some were fishermen. Others were traders, boat builders, or sailors. At first, the colonies turned some of their trading ships into fighting ships. Soon, shipbuilders were building real warships as well. During the Revolutionary War, called the American War of Independence, 53 ships served in the new American Navy. Maybe 54, if you count a funny-looking little boat called the Turtle. Chapter 2. The Funny-Looking Boat. The Turtle may have been funny-looking, but it was an amazing boat. It was made to travel underwater. A few inventors in Europe had already tried to build underwater boats, but those boats were all experiments. The Turtle was the world's first real working submarine. It was also the first submarine to be used in a war. The name Turtle came from its strange shape. It looked like two turtle shells set on end and glued together. Another strange thing about the Turtle was that it wasn't made by a shipbuilder. It was made by a farmer from Connecticut. His name was David Bushnell. He had never built a boat before. He didn't have a factory or any fancy tools. As a matter of fact, the Turtle was built in a shed on a friend's farm. Many of the ideas David used in the Turtle turned out to be very good ones. Many of them are still used, with modern changes, of course, in submarines today. This is the story of David Bushnell and that first submarine, of their adventures and of their misfortunes. Chapter 3. Young David. David Bushnell was born on his father's farm near Saybrook, Connecticut, on August 30th, 1740. 6 years later, his brother Ezra was born. Then 3 girls, Dency, Lydia, and Sarah, were added to the family. Neighbors lived far apart, and there were few children David's age for him to play with. He spent most of his free time alone, reading books. He loved to read, and he loved to learn. David wanted to know about everything, but work on the farm kept him busy, and there was little time for school. When David was 27, that all changed. First, his father died. Then shortly after, Dencia and Lydia died too. His mother remarried and took young Sarah with her. She left the farm to David and his brother Ezra. This was David's big chance. He sold half of the farm to his brother. At last, he had the money and the time to go to college. David knew he first had much to learn. He moved into town and found a teacher to help him, the Reverend John Devotion. Reverend Devotion was the pastor of the local Congregational church and probably the most educated man in Saybrook. Chapter 4. David at Yale. After spending 2 years with Reverend Devotion, David was ready to enter Yale College. This was 1771, 5 years before the Declaration of Independence was signed. But even then, many colonists were complaining about the way England was treating them. England was forcing them to pay more and more taxes. There were new taxes on tea, glass, paper, and paint, and English soldiers were being sent everywhere to collect the taxes. The year before David went to Yale, people in Boston proved how angry they were. A group of Boston citizens grabbed sticks and made snowballs to throw at the English soldiers. They shouted, "Let's drive out those rascals." After a few snowballs were thrown, some of the soldiers shot into the crowd. 3 men were killed and 8 were wounded. The colonists called it the Boston Massacre. Talk of war was everywhere the year David Bushnell went to Yale. Maybe that's why he became interested in gunpowder. Some of his ideas were about how gunpowder could be exploded underwater. Most of his teachers and students didn't think this was possible, so David began testing. First, he put 2 ounces of gunpowder into a wooden pipe. He sank the pipe 4 feet underwater, only the top stuck out. Then David lit the gunpowder in the top of the pipe, and the whole pipe blew up. He knew he was on the right track. His next test was much bigger. He put 2 pounds of gunpowder into a wooden bottle. On top of the bottle, he put a 2-inch thick oak plank. Then on top of the plank, he put a large barrel called a hogshead. The hogshead was loaded with stones. This held the bottle of gunpowder deep in the water. Again, a wooden pipe ran down through the hogshead and the plank into the bottle at the bottom. The pipe was filled with gunpowder too. David lighted the top of the pipe. The powder burned all the way to the bottom, and the wooden bottle exploded. As David Bushnell wrote, it produced a very great effect, rending the plank into pieces, demolishing the hogshead, and casting the stones and the ruins of the hogshead with a body of water many feet into the air, to the astonishment of the spectators. David had proved that gunpowder could be fired underwater. Now he wanted to use his findings. He spent much of his time during those college years thinking about this idea. By 1774, he wrote that he was drawing plans for a submarine mine. The next step was to figure out some way to use the mine. No one knows if David had read about any of the early submarines in Europe, but by his Christmas vacation in 1774, he wrote that he was making plans for a submarine vessel that would attach his mine to enemy ships. That spring, in 1775, the War of Independence started. There were battles at Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts. A few months later, David graduated from Yale. Because of the war, Yale closed 2 weeks early that summer. A quiet graduation was held in the college library.